And welcome to the final webinar in our series on special ed innovations during COVID-19. My name is Kristen Wright. I'm the director of the Special Education Division here at the California Department of Education, and I'm happy to welcome you along with our Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, to today's webinar. While this is the last of the series of webinars, rest assured we will continue to provide you with the information and resources both directly from the CDE as well as through our many technical assistance providers who will be continuing to share out with you. Today, we will spend some time focused on our students with some very specific as well as our students with extensive support needs. It is no secret that for some of our students with disabilities, distance learning has not been an easy transition. This has certainly been the case for our most complex learners. Many of our students with extensive support needs are highly reliant on people. When our regular people supports aren't there, it is the parents and family members who are most often filling that need. We've had many questions from parents and educators about what to do when so much of the daily support and routine is based on people that are not physically present. The answer to these questions are anything but simple. I know as a parent that putting together an IEP in the best of circumstances with the right supports, scheduling, and related services did not happen in one day or even in a few weeks. We built this over time. This is no different. While it sometimes feels like this is a great opportunity, and sometimes it doesn't feel like a great opportunity, I am more than ever committed in my own home to building out the assistive technology and planning for the next time we pivot to community, from community to our house. So in there with you in solidarity. And can you believe we've only been doing this for 6 weeks? In those 6 weeks, we've heard from many educators who are doing a lot of innovative, imaginative, and interesting things, and parents. In fact, more than 150 California practitioners have been meeting every week to share ideas, resources, and practices to share out with all of you through these webinars, as well as what will be part of a larger website coming up in the next week. That came out of the Superintendent's Innovations in Special Education Work Group that began the first week that this all occurred. Some of those innovations we have shared with you in previous week's webinars will also be there. Many of us have tried some things that didn't work and are still trying things that we hope work. That is where we are. But there are some things we know. Relationships between families and schools have never been more important. As teachers, administrators, and school staff have become the lifeline for so many families, we salute them as they too are trying to navigate a new world of teaching and caretaking their own families all simultaneously. As we look forward to moving to the next phase where we can begin to resume some of our previous normal, we will have to be extra vigilant to plan for our students with the most significant disabilities so we don't leave them behind. And I hope the momentum that we've been gaining over the past few years in including each and every one of our students, especially our students with significant disabilities, will not be lost due to COVID-19. That work will continue. I'm going to now pass the mic to Kevin Schaefer and Kristen Brooks from the California Supporting Inclusive Practices Project that will continue that work in California and that we will continue that work around inclusion even in a distance learning environment. Thank you, Kristen and Kevin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to Kristen and the team at CDE for their hard work and support at such a critical time in education across California. My name is Kevin Schaefer, Director of Program Support with the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project out of El Dorado County. Also with us is Kristen Brooks, Executive Director with the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project out of Riverside County, who we will hear from at the end of this webinar. We have the pleasure of introducing our presenters this afternoon. You will hear from Michelle Austin, speech language pathologist, and Laura Lavery, education specialist, both with the Diagnostic Center of Central California, with a focus on assistive technology, augmentative alternative communication. They will present ideas to support individuals with complex communication needs during distance learning. Next, we will hear from Heidi Ambrosius of the Moreno Valley Unified School District, Nicole Lombardi Racine from Temecula Valley Unified School District, and Leslie Kirui, Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District, which make up the Southern California Adapted Physical Education Consortium, presenting ways adapted PE supports can assist students in moving forward and springing into action during distance learning. Then we'll hear a few innovative suggestions to support families through related services by Robin Chu of Growing Healthy Children Therapy Services. And finally, we will hear from Sarah Ott, San Diego Unified School District Executive Director of Special Education, who will share her district's journey in developing and implementing a distance learning plan for students receiving related services and students with low incidence disabilities. We will start with Michelle and Laura. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Kevin. This is Michelle Austin, and I'm a speech-language pathologist, assistive technology specialist, and specialize in augmentative alternative communication at the Diagnostic Center.
And I am Laura Lavery, also from the Diagnostic Center, but I'm an education specialist. And I wanted to share a few sentences on what the Diagnostic Center is. There are 3 regional assessment centers that are operated by the State Special Schools and Services Division of the California Department of Education. Michelle and I work at Diagnostic Center Central. We have a Diagnostic Center North and a Diagnostic Center South. The centers provide assessments, trainings, and projects. The projects provide a variety of technical assistance. For example, we will do a training and then provide consultation. We can do on-site consultation that can include demonstration teaching, observations, recommendations, and problem solving and coaching. And so project topics are endless: assistive technology, augmentative alternative communications, students with complex needs, evidence-based instructional strategies, autism spectrum disorders, and more. We have a website that you can go to get additional information if you're interested in finding out what other services we provide. During this presentation, Michelle and I mentioned many resources, and just to let you know, we don't get any financial benefits out of it. We find resources that are easy to implement, that are practical, and that fit the topic at that moment. And so we talk to them. Below on this slide, you also see that we have our email addresses listed. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email to Michelle or myself.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So as Laura was saying, these are our emails. I just want to reiterate that everything that the diagnostic centers provide is at no charge to either the families or the school districts that we support. Okay, next slide, please. So just like as Kristen was talking about as we started this, we're really going to start talking about those kids that have significant complex communication needs. And if you look at, these are our kids that have those big needs and have people support needs. You know, we talk about their needing extra support for mobility or extra support to support some of their sensory pieces in terms of getting overstimulated. And I know that, you know, we have Heidi, Leslie, and Nicole are going to talk about some of the mobility pieces in terms of how an APE specialist can look at it. And Robin, who's our occupational therapist on this team, is going to be talking about how we talk about maybe some of those self-regulation pieces. And I think when we look at this list, and I look at this as I say, communication as an SLP, speech language pathologist, is crucial for our kids. And one of the things that I want us to remember is we can't as obviously do business as usual. The format that we do our business has changed, but we have to take a different stance in how we view that. Laura and I were just recently reaching out and talking to some parents, and this parent whose child had some physical disabilities and was looking at some accessing issues, needing to use a switch to access a computer, which would then turn into accessing a communication device. And as we were trying to problem solve with this family, what was shared was, please don't give me one more thing to do. At this time, all of my time and energy is taken up doing all of the physical pieces and everything that the student needs. And I don't need one more thing at this time to make me feel like a bad parent. And I think for us, that means really we have to use our listening skills and say, you're absolutely right. It is a lot to think about and a lot to do, especially as you're reliant on so many outside people and agencies to provide support. So what we need to do sometimes, and what we did for this family, is we reached out and made a connection with another family, because what they really needed was a connection that we can listen to, but we can't actually fulfill that need. So I think we need to meet our teams, and that's everybody on our teams in terms of learning new technology and all of that, meet our teams where they're at and develop our plan from there. Next slide, please. So as we think about how we're going to develop this plan and what it's going to look like, we've gone through how we're going to meet these needs. Are we going to use Zoom? Are we going to use Smart Tech or a Smartboard piece to do that? Are we using Google Classrooms? Do our families have limited technology, and are we sending out packets? American Speech and Hearing Association has a lot of things in terms of how, as a speech language pathologist, I could provide distance supports for families. But one of the things that I think is important for us to think about is using an approach that is an AT assistive technology specialist we consider, which is the SET model, which is looking at student, environment, task, and tools. And that's by Joy Zabala, and you have that link on your page. And really what it is where's our student? What is the environment? It's home. What do they have available? What do we want to accomplish? And develop our plan from there, and really looking at a problem-solving approach. It can't be just we're going to focus on our goals and objective approach, because the delivery may be different. How we present that may be different. So one of the things that Laura and I like to talk about is really, we want to say, let's make it functional. And I know it's in lots of IEPs, functional activities. When we look at that word functional activities or functional approach, the word fun jumps out in us. And I think for us and for all of our kids, it has to be joyful. If it's not fun, why am I doing it? I might do it a few times for you, but it has to be something that is fun and motivating. And so how can we do that where we're not saying, I want you to spend 25 minutes of your day doing X, Y, Z with the family. And yes, as a parent, I would do that, but it may not be the best and most useful time that I spend with my child. So how can we build activities and make them fun for our families? Next slide, please. So where do we start to build language? I think this is a perfect timing for this, because we're at the end of April. April was Alternative Access Month. So our kids that have physical disabilities, how can we access those pieces? May is Better Speech and Hearing Month. So where do we start to build language? When we think about language and words, next slide, please. We think about building words and teaching language, and everything that we do is language. The words we choose, we should choose very wisely. 80% of the words that we use to communicate come from a list that we call our core vocabulary list. And so on that link by Gail Van Taventoven, there's a list and a link to multiple lists of core vocabulary. 80% of the words that I use and say, that we all say, come from a big list of about 200 words. We're using them differently. So 80% of what we use are the same words over and over again. 20% are what we call fringe words, words that would be less useful. So for instance, science words, those are very fringe words for me. I don't talk a lot about science. But things that would be popular and I should use would be those core vocabulary words. So core vocabulary words are things that are like all done and away and go and help. You'll also find that there's not a lot of nouns in that core vocabulary list. Next slide, please. So Laura, let's talk a little bit about core vocabulary. And if we look at this list, there's 15 words on this list, and those are core vocabulary. So I'd like you to take 20 seconds, and we're going to start the timer, and I want you to call out as many two-word phrases as you can off of this list. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Go ahead. Go.
I like, want that, mind more, stop it, go away, you help, it's mine. Whoop, that was 3. All done.
Okay. So Thank you. I think that's good because you can actually make more than just some 2-word phrases. You can make 3-word phrases. And if you think about, if I'm going to, and this is one thing as an augmentative alternative specialist, helping kids learn to communicate through pictures, I don't want to be what I call the keeper of words. But as I'm teaching these words, I want to start with words that can be used more frequently. So in those words, those phrases that you gave us, let's think for a second, like what environments, like when in your day could you use those phrases that you used?
I would want that when I want my Fruit Loops because I don't want oatmeal. I
Okay.
would mind more when my brother's trying to take something away from me. Stop it to make my brother stop taking my things away. You help when I have to go potty or when I want to have a burrito, because it could be preschool through adulthood.
So in all of those words, we can use these words a lot throughout the day, just in these 15 words. We can use them frequently throughout the day. And one of the things that I noticed as you were giving me that list is we can use them for lots of language functions. So it's not just a requesting. You talked about directing somebody. You talked about negating something. You saying no to somebody. You talked about taking ownership of something. So when we think about words and which words we should use, these core words lend us to using words that fall in lots of different functions. Next slide, please. So when we think about these different words, one of the things we need to think about is where is our student in or a child in development of language? So how we think about development of language when we think about somebody who's using an alternative or augmentative form, so using pictures to communicate. A lot of people say we just pick words here and there. One of the things I want to show you is if you can open up the link to the PRC Language Lab, that hyperlink right there. There's stages of language development, and these stages of language development are been based on how we develop verbal communication, and that's based on Brown stages of language development. So, for instance, if I ask you to click on the Go to Stage 1 button, and you can see what words, usually less than 85 words, so just learning language. I'm usually using more single words. It gives some examples of some of those core words, and it also gives some examples of some objectives that you might want to have. Okay, if you can click on, let's look at another stage really quickly, stage 4. So now we're up to 1,000 to 2,000 words, and we're combining 3-word sentences, and we're using past tense, and we're using possessions, all of those things. And again, it gives you those objectives of, as an speech language pathologist, what I might want to think about. The piece that's important is there's that other link, and we're not going to go to it right now, that says language screener. If I'm unsure where my child is at, I can look at that, or I can have my professionals look at that, and it helps me determine what stage of language development my student is. And then it helps me gear what words I should select and how I should move forward for that. Okay, thank you. If we can go back to the PowerPoint. And next slide, please.
So being the teacher that I am, I want to have everything organized. I want to have my lesson plan. And for me to do this and to make sure that I use my my core words, I look at my environment. So on this slide, you can see the environment is either breakfast or it's play, a scavenger hunt. And you can see that the next column, I've identified the core words that I want to use during that interaction. And then I can also fit in my IEP goals because I can work on that fine motor by using the spoon, which would be self-help, or holding the spoon, which is fine motor. I can use it by counting how many Cheez-Its that I have, although I would have that for breakfast, but most people wouldn't. And then there's the accommodation and assistive technology that makes that possible.
Right. So that assistive technology piece is that any piece of equipment, product, or system that's going to support our students in building growth. And that communication system can look different depending on whether it's a simple message or a single message and it's used for participation, or it could be where I'm combining words, again, depending on where we're at. And I know we're getting close to time, so I want to jump to the next slide, please, really quickly.
And so,
go ahead.
On this slide, it's looking at the academic part, the reading part. So whether you do a preschool cat in the hat book or unique learning for preschools through high school or core lit books like Harry Potter, we can find a way to do a matrix for that, adjust the core words, and make sure that we're hitting all of our main areas that we want to for IEP goals.
So really quickly, if you can click on that activity template under the cat in the hat, just to make that picture a little bit bigger. So this is another way to kind of write a lesson plan or think about adding our words in, adding all the materials in, and then really doing a direction. And so as a speech language pathologist, maybe something that I share. And I model this because I think it's important for us to think about our students are not our only focus. We really need to move to that coaching model where we're coaching the families and being a support to them. And it talks about in those directions how to use what we call aided language, and aided languages showing what it looks like to speak in a symbol system. So if you can click out of that and quickly go to our next slide, because I think we are just about out of time. This is just a way to think about when I'm looking at those activities, I need to think about all those different forms of language, not just a requesting, but did I add words and did I show words that go into all of those pieces for our students so that we are modeling higher language. Okay, next slide. And I know data is very important. So just really quickly, knowing where your student is and really looking at the types of prompts that we're going to be using and how we keep data. A lot of your communication devices will keep data in itself. And there's a link to the Realize language. Some of them have, words that I said in the history that you can look at. You can write down things, but I think it's a way for us to say, this is how I'm considering and showing that, yes, we're working and talking. And I had a wonderful family who quickly sent me all of their Realize data to say, okay, this is everything we're doing throughout the day. What else can we be adding? And with that, the last few are just a couple, if you can want to go through the last couple slides, just a couple resources for you guys. And we just want to say thank you guys so much for your time, and make sure that you're having a lot of fun as you're doing all of this, and stay safe.
Thank you for inviting us into your homes and offices.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Michelle and Laura. Such practical information. We appreciate you presenting and taking your time to be with us today. We will move to Heidi, Leslie, and Nicole. Take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you so much to the Department of Education for allowing us to be here to represent the wonderful field of adapted physical education. My name is Heidi Ambrosius, and I'm an adapted PE specialist for the Moreno Valley Unified School District and a lecturer at Cal State San Bernardino in their adapted PE program. I'm so pleased to be here today with my colleagues, Leslie Kirowe from the Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District and Nicole Lombardi-Racine from the Temecula Valley Unified School District. Together, we run the Southern California Adapted PE Consortium, which hosts and organizes workshops and trainings for local adapted PE specialists. Next slide, please. We have been collaborating with colleagues around the state and the country since March 13th, when most school districts received word of temporary shutdown. In those first few days, we, like many other teachers, scrambled to find ideas about what to do next and how to move forward. Many adapted PE teachers sprang into action and began connecting online and sharing distance learning ideas, lessons, and videos via social media pages and over Zoom meetings. However, many teachers were still left wondering how exactly they would transition their kinesthetic teaching into an online experience that continued to provide adequate movement instruction in a home setting. We asked ourselves, what does best practice look like in this situation for our students? How can we make this less overwhelming and beneficial for students and parents? How do we address things like privacy issues with various online learning platforms, and how can we utilize them in adapted PE? How can we adequately provide movement lessons for every student, especially our more severe student population and physically impaired students? Next slide, please. We have many roles as adapted physical educators. We not only provide direct services to our students, but provide different types of collaborative consultation support for our students within their least restrictive environment for PE. According to IDEA, a continuum of physical education placement options must be available to students in special education. If students are unable to participate successfully in a general or specially designed PE program due to the severity of their disability, an IEP team can consider adapted PE services. These services are available for those who require them within all programs along this continuum. Students who require adapted PE services as determined by assessment will have these services added to their IEPs and goals written to address areas of need. As adapted PE teachers, our many roles and levels of support are unique for each individual student. Next slide, please. All of us have a passion for our students, and finding a model of distance learning to best meet all students' unique needs has become our goal. As we contemplate best practice, we are confronted with thinking outside the box to develop creative ways to address some of the challenges we face specific to our unique field. We have asked ourselves, what exactly does kinesthetic teaching look like from a distance, and how do we bring ourselves up to speed with technology to provide quality instruction? How can we help families who don't have specialized equipment adapt and use items around the house to work on individual goals? How do we manage large caseloads to ensure no one is missed? And how are we communicating with families and receiving feedback and monitoring progress? Leslie Curowy will now discuss some ways that APE teachers are meeting the challenges we face through distance learning. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Heidi. As Heidi mentioned, adapted PE teachers do have a few challenges with distance learning that are unique to our field. The first is technology and teaching without being present. It's no secret that a physical educator's teaching space is most often the outdoors, with many using low-tech methods for instruction. As a result, many physical educators may not be as current with the most recent technologies and tools to transition to teaching online. When moving from low-tech to high-tech, adapted PE teachers quickly did what they do best. They adapted to the current conditions. Many have spent time taking advantage of various professional development opportunities or watching tutorials to learn about many different tools and applications. Although privacy and equity with live virtual teaching continues to be a concern for many adapted PE teachers, whose direct service groups may consist of children from different classes and different grade levels, live instruction may be appropriate for some, but not all, depending on the situation and need. Some APE teachers have been able to provide live teaching via various platforms with the help of paraprofessionals to provide cueing and prompting and monitor online behavior to allow the teacher uninterrupted virtual sessions. Live meetups for students with more severe disabilities may include visually connecting with the student and providing consultation to families on how to implement strategies to work on goals in the home. Many teachers have opted to video record lessons, which can easily be individualized for students and posted to various APE teacher websites and online platforms such as YouTube or Google Classroom and Flipgrid, so that families may access them on their own time. Also, low-tech approaches for students and families with limited access may include phone calls or text and information delivered via paper documents. Next slide. The next unique challenge is equipment. APE teachers often utilize specialized equipment such as special balls, ramps, or switch-activated gadgets to make the curriculum accessible for every child. Many adapted PE teachers push their creative brains further out of the box when it comes to substituting homemade items for specialized equipment. Many items outlined here, such as for ball skills, using stuffed animals and socks for throwing and catching, or using Ziploc bags filled with rice or bells, stacked shoe boxes for kicking targets, or cutting open cardboard boxes to use as a modified ramp for bowling. For balance and locomotor skills, making lines or shapes on the floor with painter's tape or chalk as visuals to walk along, jump, hop, or gallop, or using 2x4 wood for balance activities. And for physical fitness, using canned goods filled with water, using canned goods or for filling water bottles as weights, or lifting and carrying backpacks filled with heavy items. Next slide. The third challenge is caseload numbers. A typical APE teacher caseload in the state of California can be between 40 and 100 plus students with an age span of 3 to 22 years old. APE teachers needed ways to manage large caseloads within the distance learning model. One way to do this is to centralize resources by developing websites or YouTube channels as a one-stop shop. Families and educators are easily able to, at any time, click and reference video lessons or other resources that address a child's individual goals. Staying organized and consistent while managing multiple platforms during these times can be tricky, but it is imperative to balancing high numbers of students through distance learning. Keeping a daily to-do list and logs and consistent weekly schedule with office hours and availability for IEP meetings are always ways to keep the workload under control. Next slide. Number 4 is communicating with families and receiving feedback. Communicating with all families on a weekly basis may be ideal, but not always realistic depending upon each situation. Many APE teachers have made themselves available in various forms by using apps like Remind or Google Voice, and email and phone calls to parents, or scheduling consultations via video conferencing. For feedback, many teachers sent surveys to families of how often they would like to be contacted. Progress monitoring has taken place via things like Google Form or other online surveys, or simply checking in with a parent to inquire about what they observed their child do during the lesson. Many parents have been able to utilize the online tools to send in pictures and video of their child completing the assigned movement lesson activities. And I'd like to turn it over to Nicole Lombardi-Racine, who will discuss distance learning, adaptive PE services, and supports, and what they look like along the continuum of physical education programs. Next slide.
Thank you, Leslie and Heidi. One of the unique aspects of adaptive physical education is that physical education programs provide a continuum of options for students in special education. Looking at the picture on the slide from the Adaptive Physical Education Guidelines in California schools, you can see there is general PE, specially designed PE, and adaptive PE. APE teachers not only provide services for students that require them, but they also provide support in PE settings that the student participates in. Next slide, please. The least restricted placement for physical education is a general education program. For those students participating in this program and who require adaptive PE, services look different based on the individual need. For distance learning, many APE teachers continue to collaborate with their general PE teachers to provide activity accommodations and modifications so that their students can continue to learn and be successful at home. Collaboration on lessons is made easier if all teachers and parents are accessing and using shared platforms, such as Google Classroom or Seesaw. Next slide, please. An example of what this collaboration would look like is a student who has a lower limb physical limitation may need an alternative way to kick a ball to a target during a distance learning general PE lesson. Adaptive PE teachers can assist general PE teachers and parents during this time on ways to modify the lesson, such as shortening the distance to the target or using homemade items such as a broomstick to strike the ball with their arms. Adaptive PE teachers can also remain in contact with the student and parents directly to provide suggestions on how to work on goals at home to increase success and address the individualized needs. This type of support can also be offered to those students who are participating in a specially designed PE program, either taught by their classroom teacher or a general education PE teacher. Distance learning requires many working components, especially for our moderate to severe populations. Some students benefit from pre-recorded videos because they allow for continual practice and demonstration. The video may also be paused and rewound for easier breakdown of skills. Prompt levels for these students can vary from visual demonstration and verbal cueing to physical shaping and assistance, depending on the motor function and cognitive abilities. More consultation may also be needed for student and live Zoom or Google Meet sessions may also be helpful. Next slide, please. As you can see from what we have outlined in the presentation, there are many facets to the adaptive physical education that offers challenges in the realm of distance learning. APE specialists in the field have come together to find the best way to meet student and parents' need during this difficult time. We hope that this has helped clarify some of the ways to address our students' unique needs through distance learning. If you have any questions or would like information on resources, please contact us at socaladaptivepe@gmail.com. Heidi, Leslie, and myself want to thank you so much for having us and letting us share how we address these needs in adaptive physical education. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi, Leslie, and Nicole. One of the questions we get most often is, what does occupational therapy, what does adapted PE and physical therapy look like in a distance learning situation? So for more information, we turn to Robin Chu.
All right, thanks so much. So I am the owner and founder of Growing Healthy Children Therapy Services. We're a non-public agency that partners with schools to support students and teachers through the occupational therapy world, speech therapy, physical therapy, our lovely adaptive PE team, and assistive technology. And as Michelle said at the beginning, I'm an occupational therapist. So I'm lucky to get to talk with you all today about some overarching principles to consider that actually unify all of our different therapy services and help support our families through all these related services, and as an IEP team, no matter what type of therapist you are and what the strengths and needs and abilities of your child are. As we talked about at the beginning of this, we're looking to support all of you, whether you are a teacher or a parent or an administrator, and whether the students that you're working with are those with higher level needs or greater challenges. No matter how many words they can say, our heart as providers and all of the speakers today is really to help you all and come alongside you during this time. So I hope that these principles that I'm going to share for the next couple minutes will also help you families listening to think about what you need during this time and how your school can best help support your child to learn from a distance. Next slide, please. So the first suggestion that I want to look at from the angle of different therapy services is, how do we continue to do what we believe is best practice no matter what? And that is individualize and provide collaborative therapeutic support. Students and their families really need IEP services that are individualized and as collaborative as before, and maybe even more at this point. There's a lot of ways that we can provide these therapy services during this time, and it's important that we provide what students need and what the families need to help this learning continue. I've put this cartoon on here because I know we're all asking this question, what is normal? And we're really, really we're thirsting for an ability to establish a new normal. And sometimes that looks as natural as this girl at the concert, right? She's throwing her hands in the air and tears are coming out. That new normal right now is sometimes also looking as crazy as an adult throwing themselves on the floor and throwing a full-on tantrum like a 2-year-old. And we've all been on all phases of this continuum of normal throughout this time. I think it's important to think about where that's coming from for each of us. And as therapists, we really want to meet you where you're at, whether you're a teacher or an administrator or a parent. We want to look at what your new normal looks like and meet you there. And again, individualize and provide collaborative support. So what does that look like? What has that looked like for our therapists at Growing Healthy Children and really across the state? I've been a part of that Innovative Solutions work group on Friday afternoons, and I want to represent some of the ideas that have been shared because people are working with such dedication. It's really inspirational. On this slide, I've brainstormed some different ways that we can address each student's areas of need to support progress on their goals and prevent regression, but also just to support the overall well-being of families. The services across the state have looked like families logging in real time onto a teleconference platform like Zoom and working with their physical therapist. The therapist might talk with the family and come up with some activities that a family can do at home that fit in with the culture and routine of their family. And this is where my heart as an occupational therapist really shines. I think about the book No Longer a Secret, and I think about how we as therapists have the ability to look at how that family functions in their daily routine. What are the unique challenges of that family? And our abilities as therapists really come out here. I talked with a couple of our physical therapists on our team about how this is looking for them at home or supporting families in their home. One of the things that they're absolutely doing, like our adaptive PE team was talking about, is using home equipment. Some therapists have created Google Forms that they're sending out to families and asking them, what do you have around the house? Do you have a therapy ball or a yoga mat? Do you have a big blanket that you're okay with us unfolding and covering the living room floor with? And how do you feel about couch cushions coming off the couches? Some of my physical therapists' favorite resource is the Move to Learn curriculum that was written by a PT. And then we're also, as all of us are looking at the home environment, and we're thinking about accessing the physical educational environment as well as the cultural academic environment. So who's available to help? How many stairs are there from their bedroom to the living room? Where is the family plunking their kids down? And how's that going with brother and sister sitting next to each other on the couch? There's a lot of ways that we can provide that support. If you're a parent listening to this, think about what support looks like to you, and please connect with your therapist, connect with your IEP team, and let them know. There is absolutely no shame in this season of saying, I can't take data for you, so thank you, Michelle, for encouraging me that my AAC device is going to take that data, right? Like, the parent, you guys need to say to us, this is what I can do, and that's what leads to that second word, collaborative, right? As therapists, now more than ever, as related service providers, we need to be working with you all as a full IEP team. And one of the ways that we can do that, one of the ways that the therapists have reported across the state that parents feel the most appreciative of, is our related service providers joining the learning platform that the teacher is already using. And that's where we add therapy activities like the one I'm going to talk about in a minute. And actually, all of the students can use these, or we can section it off on that Google Classroom or on that Class Dojo, whatever platform it is. And this is where true inclusion can happen and can really blossom. I know that families are really appreciating having one fewer additional login or platform to keep track of, as they're thinking, how in the world, where do I put those spelling words again? Or where do I upload this activity that I completed? So we really, really want to work together. Next slide. So as a therapist that supports other therapists within Growing Healthy Children, but also other organizations, I've had a front row seat to the mindset shift that's happening in all of us. And I'm excited to tell you all that what I've seen across all of the related services is this amazing shift through connection and encouragement and brainstorming with other IEP team members. I'm watching related service providers with various levels of technological comfort move from a how on earth am I going to support my students, shifting then, as you can see the arrows go down here, to close to an I'll try it mentality. And then our therapists are really close and are kind of going over the mountain to a wow, why can't I support progress with, and then fill in the blank. I've seen therapists work with families on all the different areas of need that we all provide. So handwriting help, articulation therapy, social skills, fine motor skills, gross motor skills, even sensory regulation activities, and all of that through distance learning. But the key here to this mindset shift that we're really looking for is the connection, engagement, and brainstorming. So if you're an administrator listening to this, one of the most helpful things you can do is check in with your providers in all your free time, which I know you have almost none of, but in an efficient way, right? Group up those related service providers and teachers and encourage them to connect with each other and brainstorm. I was on an IEP last week that just was a perfect example of this. We all came together and the parent was giving her feedback on what everything was looking like, and we were developing our COVID-19 plan. And one of the administrators said, well, how about if the speech therapist just opens up an office hour and any student can jump in and they can answer the question of the week? And how beautiful that would be for this one specific student to practice her social skills and language, but alongside the other students from that same, and in this case, it was from a charter school, they were going to open it up to all the students. So there are blossoming ways of inclusive support happening that's very individualized, and it's coming from this connection and encouragement and brainstorming across the entire IEP team. So next slide. No matter which member of the IEP team you are, it's really important to utilize a regulation first approach for yourself and your students. We need to help our students and our teams move out of a fight or flight reaction and into a learning zone of regulated and ready to learn. This key point speaks to the importance of putting on our own oxygen mask before trying to help another person. For administrators, For you guys, this might look like, and I've heard from some administrators across the state, they're sending out to their team a list of free online exercise classes like ClassPass, or a link to a free mindfulness app like Calm. And it might just be taking a deep breath yourself before making that hard phone call to a difficult and tricky situation. For teachers and therapists, this might mean setting a timer and getting up from your computer every so often. We are so not used to sitting in our chairs all day, unless, of course, it's progress report time. And you might do a plank position or go for a quick walk. For our parents and our families, but then also our teachers, therapists, and administrators, we also created a free regulated and ready to learn basic toolkit. So next slide. Wanted to end my time with one of the activities from this toolkit. This is a quick little activity you can do with your whole class or with specific students or email to a family. It's the first step to getting regulated and ready, and that is self-awareness. Family members would cut out this dial, color the sections, and then share how they're doing. And this is an activity where siblings can come together. We heard from one family recently that the siblings are fighting over who gets to do the speech therapy activity with the daughter that has some communication needs. So next slide. What do you do if you are not regulated and ready to teach, coordinate, or even just get through your day? What if your kids are bouncing off the walls? The packet that you guys can download has some sensory activities, but I wanted to take 30 seconds and give you guys the gift of a couple quick regulation activities. So everyone just squeeze your ears with your shoulders. Raise your shoulders up really high, all the way up to your earlobes. Squeeze as hard as you can, and then relax those shoulders back and down. So those muscle contractions are going to really help you to get regulated. Another quick one to do without anyone noticing is push your tongue up on the roof of your mouth as hard as you possibly can, and then let it rest down into your mouth, and that releases all the jaw muscles that some of you tighten when you're starting to get stressed out. I put pinwheels on here because that's another really fun activity to do together and practice some slow breathing techniques. At the very least, at the end of this presentation, before diving back into life, take a moment and check in with each of your senses. And doing that little bit of mindfulness will go a long way towards regulation. So last but not least, very, very quickly, I wanted to talk, next slide, about documentation. As much as we don't love this topic, we really care about tracking progress and knowing that what we're doing is making a difference. And it's important during this time to consider what that transition in the fall is going to look like and what information you're going to need when thinking about whether compensatory time is owed. And I know this is not the favorite topic. That's why I did regulation first, and now we're talking about this. But as a therapist, make sure to document your students' current progress on their goals and include information that is measurable and thorough. Your administrators, but also the families you work with, will really appreciate you keeping careful record of what was offered, when it was offered, and what was provided. There are many, many things to keep track of during this time. But my vision for all of you is that we're going to emerge out of this with stronger relationships between therapists, teachers, administrators, and parents. We will have found new inclusive opportunities, and we're really going to rise out of this a stronger team than before. So please feel free to contact me if you need help with that mindset shift or if you need help with some regulating activities. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Robin. I love the idea of regulation first for yourself and for your children, your students. So we come to Sarah Ott from the San Diego Unified School District. Sarah, we really appreciate you joining the team on late notice, and we are looking forward to hearing the plan and the journey that San Diego Unified School District has traveled.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm glad to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Executive Director of Special Education in San Diego Unified School District. I would like to share the process that San Diego Unified District took to create our distance learning plan and the resources and plans we developed. Next slide. Our executive leadership team, led by our Chief of Staff, has executive leaders from all different departments. This team was called upon to start creating the vision grounded in our values for distance learning and research distance learning ideas. we decided to start with a soft launch where we developed resources for parents to support students as soon as possible. Starting with the soft launch created time for training for staff to expand their knowledge on digital platforms and time to create their digital classrooms. We also were able to deliver devices, connect families to internet, and deliver hotspots. During soft launch, we also focused on meal distribution, which occurs daily. As we prepared for distance learning, we developed district-wide guidelines and resources that would support all programs supporting distance learning. We have 3 models that educators can use in our distance learning plan. Model 1 is district-provided instructional materials that is rolled out to families by the educators. Model 2 is educator-led with educator-created materials using the platforms Seesaw, Google Classroom, or Canvas. Model 3 is the most advanced. Teachers use both district materials and educator-created materials on the platforms to provide opportunities for collaboration, not only with the educator, but also among students. This allows for flexibility and ensures that all the plans developed were aligned to our district distance learning vision. Next slide. Once we have the structure and vision in place, we were able to start engaging committees that were led by leads in each program. And this was unique to San Diego Unified because typically special ed starts with the committees, and we were able to start with the district vision and then move to committees. We were able to build from the district plan and start that alignment right away. We started by communicating the structures to the committees, ensuring the committees were partnered with general education peers or had a general education lens, and that these committees then researched and brainstormed resources and strategies that are more specific and aligned for each program. Once the plan was started to be developed, we gathered stakeholder feedback and held job-alike training for staff. Next slide, please. Here's a screenshot of the plans that were developed, and we have a link here for the plans. We have plans for related and low incidence services and plans for teachers in the moderate to severe program. These plans have guidelines and resources for each program. And I'll show you some examples of the related service and low incidence plan on the next slide. So here's some of the resources that were created. For adapted physical education, our teachers co-created curriculum with the general education PE teachers and embedded modifications with each lesson to support all students. Our bilingual support network and interpreting coordinated the effort to facilitate a volunteers database of teachers and paraeducators for interpreting and developed a resource guide for online meetings. Our deaf and hard of hearing program developed ASL instructional videos, how-to videos for parents and staff, provided interpreters on Zoom calls, closed caption for training and meetings, screencasting, and we also have audiologists that are troubleshooting equipment needs in the home. Staff are supporting to make sure each learning platform is accessible. Our medically and physically challenged classrooms created thematic units, used spring choice boards, videos, and movement activities, utilizing active learning webinars, learning through movement. Our music therapy developed music-based social stories and relaxation exercises for coping and activity plans to provide multisensory learning ideas. Our physical health impairment department worked with staff and parents to examine various learning platforms and how students could physically access learning. As they began to understand the home environment, they creatively provided ideas for movement through adaptive equipment and technology like Google Read and Write or voice to text. They also support parent and staff education around individual student physical and health needs. Our occupational therapists and physical therapists provide digital access, co-teaching, parent supports with home instructions. Our school psychologists provide guidance for teleservice, help with the consultation model, assessment through structured interviews, online reading and progress monitoring, and using social emotional curriculum. Our speech language pathologists built language examples during daily routines, language targets embedded in during their day, augmentative communication modeling, and assistive technology consultation. Our visual impairment program has access to learning platforms using key control Zoom, text-to-speech and Braille access through JAWS, online training for some Braille and Abacus, and expanded core curriculum to fit distance learning. They expanded independent living skills, conversation and social cues, and career education and leisure. And with orientation and mobility, they developed home-based lessons, including an understanding directionality and community opportunities as they become available. And each inside our learning distance plan, each of these have examples and resources to go alongside each program. So now I'm going to show you a couple pictures of the resources. So if we go to the next slide. The first picture is of a cause and effect computer-based program. The second picture down below is the music therapy, a lesson on sound. We have a choice board example, an example of augmentative and alternative communication language for an AC device, and an example for cortical visual impairments programs that we can use on the computer. Next slide. We have an example of calming visual sequence that our occupational therapists use. We have whole body listening and strong word emotions chart that our speech and language pathologists use. And we have an example of a parents helping to write a song for music therapy. Our next slide. This is an example of our DHH ASL specialists who created a series of screencasts that were language free. And this supports all language, including the DHH community, to support parents and students in learning how to use these digital platforms and to help them participate in our lessons. I put this as a resource that you can look at later. Next slide. To end, I just wanted to share that how we are starting to think about our transition from distance learning to traditional brick and mortar school, however that may look. We are following a similar process of working with our executive leadership team, developing committees, planning professional learning, and creating plans. Thank you for allowing me to share our process and plans with you today. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to all the presenters this afternoon. We appreciate your time, your expertise, and sharing your experiences. I'd like to pass it over to Kristen Wright.
Thank you, Kevin. And just wanted to come back over and say thank you to everyone for attending all of our webinars, and we look forward to additional interactions and to hearing your thoughts. We still will have our SED info at cde.ca.gov if you want to share your thoughts and ideas with us. We hope you'll reach out. We will also continue to have resources through our contractors with Supporting Inclusive Practices Project. Kevin and Kristen, thank you so much for all of the work you've done along with our staff and our technical staff here at the Department of Education. On behalf of all of us, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and punt it back to Kristen Brooks to give one final few words. But again, on behalf of our Superintendent, Tony Thurmond, thank you.
Thank you, Kristen and Kevin. And just a final thank you to all of our presenters across the entire series. We wish all of our colleagues, educators, families, students, and community partners well as we persevere through this pandemic. Education will forever be changed, but our relationships and innovative design to support all learners will only grow stronger. So until we see each other again, be well. Take care.